Hi guys, welcome to Beyond the Muscle. So another special episode today. So this is we are approaching almost the 1 year anniversary of this podcast. Yeah, Beyond the Muscle turns one later this month. I think it was the 27th of November. I did my first episode. So yeah, this year has flown by, and I'm fortunate enough to have spent a lot of this year speaking with like some of the best minds in natural bodybuilding, which is really cool. Very grateful to have done so. And in this episode, what I'm going to be doing is essentially giving you guys a highlight reel of the year. So I'm going to break down and share the lessons of every guest I've had on so far and give you my take on their thoughts. So this year has flown by pretty crazy. So we're going to go back to episode one where it all began, and I had Joshua Conde as the first guest. So yeah, I've known Josh since 2013, way back in the Easy Gym days in Croydon, and I met him before I first competed, and yeah, we became friends. And then I coached him in 2017 for a few shows for men's physique, and he'll have to tell me the story, but I believe I was one that convinced Josh to transition from men's physique to bodybuilding, and I imagine it's because he's got a crazy back. You should definitely check it out. Very, very well developed back, very much suited to bodybuilding, and kind of, maybe wasted a little bit of men's physique there. But Josh will tell you the story. I think it was me. I think it was me that convinced him to go down the bodybuilding route. Um, but yeah, known Josh for a long, long time. Good friend of mine, and yeah, he was my also my coach for 2024. So I contacted Josh in 2023, telling him I wanted to get back into bodybuilding, and we did some shows over last year, and it was a success. It was a good comeback season. So this first clip, Josh is going to be talking about that fine balance between size and conditioning, which is so key in natural bodybuilding, and something that I definitely could have done with taking on board in my first season in 2015. Because yeah, for me, like I mentioned before in this podcast, it was all about chasing condition, getting as lean as possible, and yeah, sacrificing shape as a result. So yeah, it's not something that's going to be applicable to all athletes, because for some people it's just me a case of trying to get lean enough. But for me, getting lean has never been a problem. And yeah, it's a case of digging too deep. So yeah, here is the clip.
Example, you gave the example of someone who is clearly fat loss, no problem. They're locked in. They get it. In a weird way, they even enjoy it. They enjoy it
Mm,
when it gets harder. That kind of stuff. So that we can get this person peeled. That's cool.
yeah.
However, is that going to be a good look on,
Mm,
on their frame? Because, like you said, they're not the best shape and structure.
mm,
Which is for me again. I go over this a lot. That is still king for me.
yeah.
Shape and structure is always still going to do very well on a bodybuilding stage over just.
Mm, yeah.
Um, However, the reason why conditioning can still win on the day is because shape and structure, but not enough
Hmm.
conditioning is not a good look either. So
Mm,
it's again, this is why, like I said, as a judge, you're just judging what you see on the stage.
yeah.
Also, there's time. I feel like there's times where, because again, with genetics, as a coach, you then also can be looking at the potential of a client where, like you just said, they can get crazy peeled and shredded, but maybe we don't want to be at that level to make sure that we have enough muscle to hang with this
Mm.
class, that kind of thing.
It's
Because
like a
again,
balancing act, I guess. Which brings me on to my next guest, Christian Kerr, who I had on for episode two. Yeah, so Christian is very experienced. He's been around for a while. And he's someone that is known for his top conditioning, like top to toe conditioning rather. Yeah, really, really good to see. He's a very good poser as well. And yeah, he touches on a couple of really important points in this clip. The first one of which I thoroughly agree with here, and that's that people often just don't get lean enough when it comes to bodybuilding. Christian and myself, and there are others too, who have to kind of rein in the chasing of conditioning. But he makes a really good point.
Like is that as natural bodybuilding, I thought
Yeah.
this is absolutely brilliant. Like someone that is not like walking around like a big water balloon,
Mm,
the stereotypical bodybuilder that everyone thinks of. Like that's not the case. And that's why I
no.
love natural bodybuilding so much because you kind of look like a bit of a normal, athletic, normal person.
Yeah.
Get on. So if you take your kit off, people are mesmerized.
Yeah,
Quite
it's
well.
crazy, isn't it? Yeah. Some of the biggest mistakes that athletes make.
I think people think they're leaner than they are.
Mm,
I generally think people get to about 10 weeks out and think they're leaner than they are.
yeah, I'd agree
Introduce
with that.
refeeds because let's be honest, it's easy. It's easy to introduce a refeed, and if you're hungry, it's easy to eat a pizza and a bowl of pasta and some whatever you want and an extra bowl of oats.
So the next guest was Darren Shepherd Loxton, DSL, as he is often known as in the bodybuilding world. So it was really good to chat to DSL. I've known of Darren for a while, even back when I was competing in 2015, but our paths never crossed until last year, where we met up at a few shows, and then this year met at a posing workshop, and then also one of the shows he was competing at as well. Yeah, so lovely guy, and yeah, very, very highly regarded in the natural bodybuilding world. And yeah, his passion really, really shines through in this podcast, in this chat we had way back in December last year. And the point he makes here on posing is really top notch. And it just emphasizes like how important practice is in this area and how overlooked an area is. Such a good point.
The best posers, you watch anyone on stage, who looks the best? The people that look like it's effortless.
Absolutely.
It's because they're working, but they're not overworking. So one of the things that I get, first and foremost, when I get a new client, we need to create pretty shapes. Once we've created that shape and we've got that nailed down, then we work on contraction. How hard do we need to work in this pose?
Next, I spoke to Dan Sutcliffe. So Dan is another bodybuilder that's been around for a while, but I only became aware of Dan last year when we were both competing at the BMBF Southern in 2024. So yeah, Dan has been on the podcast twice, but I love what he mentions here in our second chat. So we chatted about just generally speaking, his mindset for the first talk, but of his second chat when we chatted about leg training, I think, yeah, this is some of the best advice you can receive regarding leg training. He talks about kind of reaching that next level when it comes to training legs.
You have to be able to tap into like another level. It is totally different to training any other muscle group, in my opinion. You have to sort of really want to go there to that point, to that next level, unlock that kind of that mindset of, you know, I'm going to suffer, you know, and that sounds extreme, but that's how it feels when you are sort of pushing your lower body training to the limit, and that's kind of the level that I think you need to take it to be able to make sort of serious improvements in your lower body.
So after Dan, I had Ben Lloyd on the podcast. So Ben Lloyd is a very popular and incredible bodybuilder from the UK. And yeah, we go way back. So I actually prepped Ben for his first season back in 2016. And yeah, he was a great client, always asking questions. And obviously he had a lot of success that year, turning pro and then going on to achieve, yeah, really, really good things in the natural bodybuilding world. And yeah, it was great to catch up with him, reminisce about that season and about working together. And he also makes a great point. And when the season is over, it's not actually over. And yeah, it's often said that that post-show period is sometimes tougher than the contest prep. And I've certainly experienced that before. I didn't really last year. Last year I had a really good transition into the off season. But yeah, in 2015, I found it so hard going from competing to on season. Yeah, so go and check this one out.
Well,
Yeah.
it definitely inspired me. Like I say, I was following your journey on YouTube and I was thinking about competing. I was like, I've seen this coach on YouTube.
Mhm.
He just won his show and he's just having a bag of crisps now and again.
Right, yeah.
I'm like, he knows something that I don't know.
Mm,
A
yeah.
lot of it was to pick at your brain to find out what you knew about diet, but also do a prep. So I kind of benefited from both. It gets easier in a way in that you know what's about to come. I think the first prep is the hardest, really, because you don't know what to expect. But you get that same feeling towards the end of every prep where you're just walking into the gym like flipping out, I'm about to do legs here. I'm just going to power through this. So yeah, I think it does get easier, but it's hard. It is hard. And what's hard as well is knowing that once the diet's done, I used to always think, yeah, I've got another 3 weeks that it's done.
Yeah.
The contest prep's done, but it's not.
What was the biggest challenge you faced during this 2024 prep?
Biggest challenge. We had to dig low on the calories, which was interesting.
I noticed that. Yeah.
Got me thinking because remember one prep where I did myself, my calories very rarely dip below 3,000. I think my expenditure was a bit higher. I was doing more PT sessions, but still, this time round, towards the end in particular, we dropped the calories like below 2,000.
So next, I suppose AJ Morris. I had AJ on at the beginning of the year, and this point he made was certainly one that had me thinking about it for a long time after. So yeah, I met AJ way back in my first season in 2015 when he was just a teen, and yeah, obviously it's amazing to see what he's done to the natural bodybuilding landscape. Yeah, AJ's always been someone that's been very wise beyond his years, and this point he makes it is a really, really important one. So yeah, I've often mentioned on this podcast, I've often kind of talked about or pondered rather the kind of people that are drawn to doing this natural bodybuilding. And yeah, his description of what makes the perfect bodybuilder is really worth listening to. Yeah.
We always seek for things to be perfectly lined up in our day, in our routine and in our structure. I think the people that actually are quite, if you can blend a bit of an OCD kind of mindset with a level of awareness that when it gets too much, you calm it down, you put it away in a box and you relax. That's probably about the perfect bodybuilder, in my opinion, because you need to have an element of the like patterning and consistency and routine and structure, but know when to also shut it off.
So after AJ, I had Mark Willitson. So Mark is a classic physique champion, very, very competent poser. And yeah, he trains with wonderful technique as well. Yeah, someone I've got a lot of respect for in this game. And yeah, he makes a really, really good point about keeping the off season and the on season or the competitive season looking more or less the same. And yeah, I think this is a really good piece of advice because obviously it's going to make the transition from off season to competing much easier if you're just continuing those habits essentially and not having to change too much.
Bodybuilding is like a lifestyle. Yes, you've got your on season, your off season, but they should be very similar, right? You just allow more food. That's all it is, right? And a bit more flexibility, but you live the same life if you want to be a good bodybuilder as you do on prep.
No, that's so true. Really good point there. I do wonder if the people that keep the on season, the off season as similar as possible, just have an easier time with prep generally.
If you are thinking about competing, have you done a diet already? Have you undertaken a proper diet first? Because I hadn't.
Right, okay.
It's just up to the system, right? If you're just a lad who walks around quite lean but eats a bit of junk, understand that when you've got to do it properly, are you ready for that? Are you ready to do a bit? Are you ready to have a little bit of sacrifice and really be disciplined? Because it is a shock to the system. It is hard. And then obviously just enjoy that journey because at the time when it is hard, it's slow, isn't it? You feel like it's going to take forever. But before you know it, you're pumping up backstage.
My next guest was female bodybuilding champion Becky Starr. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed this chat. She was the first female guest I had on the podcast earlier this year. And yeah, on a side note, it's actually a funny story. So when I basically record all of our meetings, all of our podcasts on Zoom, like this is here. And what I will do is after the call is finished, I'll basically stop recording. And then me and the guest have a little debrief. We have a little chat. But with Becky, had a really good chat. We kind of finished the conversation. And then I just ended the call abruptly. I was, oh my God, what have I done? So yeah, I had to quickly call her back and say, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Yeah, she took it well, and she was a really good guest. See, I know Becky from competing last year, and yeah, she made a huge impact in her natural bodybuilding debut. So yeah, I absolutely love this message from Becky here. So she talks about basically not expecting to achieve what she did, and it just speaks like to how humble she is as a person. So there are quite a few bodybuilders like this, and yeah, it just shows that despite the amazing dedication and consistency that goes into bodybuilding, we're all human.
I really didn't expect to do or achieve what I achieved this season. And I when I say I went into it with no expectation, I really did go into it with no expectation. But I came out of it having met some incredible people. And for me, that whole journey it became more about the people that I met and the people that I went on the journey with. And and it's really lovely to have trophies. And actually, that reminds me that people remind me that I put that hard work in, because at the end of the day, no one can do that work in the gym for you.
No.
And no one can, do the eating for you, or the prepping for you, or the measuring out your calories and the water and all of that. I did that, but yeah, having a little bit of self-belief, I think.
Yeah, well, that's really nice. Yeah, no, that is. What has this season done for your self-belief? There must be a bit less self-doubt now, surely.
There is, but then there's this drive, isn't there, that you want to be better and improve. I think it's given me a hunger for more, as in, I thought maybe if I did the season, I wouldn't want to compete again, but I definitely do want to compete again.
So I had Steve Hall on next, and yeah, Steve is someone else who I've known for a long time. They're way back. We met in 2015 when I was first competing in bodybuilding, and Steve was too. And yeah, he's like AJ I mentioned before. It's amazing to see how much progress he's made. And in terms of his physique as well, it's completely transformed. He's someone that's always kind of had his finger on the pulse of like the scientific research, and you can tell he kind of tries to eke every last bit out of like his physique. And yeah, this was a really good point he made here. We chatted briefly about like, implementing like length and partials into his routine, and yeah, this is really worth listening to, this one.
But in terms of the impact, as I mentioned before, as a natural bodybuilder, especially someone advanced who's been training like like as long as we have, a long time.
Yeah.
Seeing muscle gain and appreciable muscle mass gain it's slow for sure. But what I can say is an area that I've always felt insecure about and thought was underdeveloped and was my calves. And that was not for lack of training them. I definitely trained them a lot, and doing length and partials on them has definitely made a significant impact. So it's just meant, I think, because when you do a calf raise, it's very hard up at the top for that like peak contraction.
Yeah.
So you might fail there, but you have like 5 more reps in the bottom position. So I think it's just allowed me to actually train the calf to like closer to true muscular failure. And I've just like hammered them, and not crazy volume, but maybe 20 sets on average across a week. So 4 times, 5 each time. Maybe somewhere around 20 sets, and doing length and partials, and they've grown substantially.
So my next guest was James Durham. So James is the athlete who I had the pleasure of competing with more than anyone else last year. So out of the 5 shows I did, James was at 4 of them with me up on stage. And yeah, he's a lovely guy. We got to know each other quite well last year, culminating with the DFAT Worlds in Munich. And the point he makes here is a great one. And it basically speaks to what bodybuilding is all about at its core, and that is the training.
So I'm not really too sure where my competitive future is going.
Right.
But like I say, we're aiming for 27. But then I said, do I stop then? Do I carry on then? But the question is, if I do stop, or if I do draw a line under it, I'm still going to train. I'm still going to follow a meal plan. So it's I'm very content with it being open-ended. As long as I can progress in the gym, and as long as I can still be competitive on stage, then we'll wait and see.
Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. I think that's a good mentality to have, really, open-ended. So yeah, at your core, all of us, we're bodybuilders, aren't we? And then we love training, and then competing on stage is it's like a branch off that, really, isn't it? And it's a big part of it, but it's the routine, it's the daily things we do, the eating, the tracking, the lifting. That's what makes us, who we are, really, isn't it? So next I had Julian Chung, or Jack Chan, as he's known as on Instagram, on the podcast. And yeah, really, really enjoyed this chat as well. So he's another one of those people that's kind of very young, wise beyond his years. He's really got his head screwed on. And yeah, it was just a really fun and enjoyable chat. The point he makes here is a very, very important one as well. And he talks about basically starting prep at the right weight, because it makes perfect sense. You're starting prep too heavy, too much weight to lose. And yeah, it's going to require too much digging and not yield the best look for you. So yeah, go and check this one out.
Not starting their prep lean enough. Right. They start their prep very, very heavy, at a very heavy weight. Some people start their prep peak gaining phase. And that just makes you have to do a lot more cardio, a lot more steps, a lot more expenditure. And if you have a lot more expenditure, you're going to be more tired at the end of prep, and it's going to put you through hell during prep. And I think that's the thing that makes people not enjoy prep. Because for me, I dieted down from 80 kilos to 70, and then we like maintained at 73 kilos for a couple months.
Yeah.
And then from 73, I went down to 64 my first show, 62 my last show. So not a lot, like obviously a decent amount of weight, but you get people who have to diet down 20, 25 kilos from, peak gaining phase to the end of prep. And by the end of the prep, they're just like, yeah, I don't want to do that again because I'm just so dead. So I think that's one of the biggest things is not starting prep at like a lean enough body composition.
So I had Ruth Kerr on the podcast next, another bodybuilder who made a really big impact last year, winning best wheels overall and novice on his first try with the BMBF. And yeah, a really nice guy as well. So Rue basically talks in this little clip I'm going to share with you about how important posing is. And it's one of those things as a bodybuilder, you know posing is hard, but the general public or people who aren't really involved with bodybuilding, it's hard to convey like how difficult like posing is.
Can't remember how many weeks out I was, but it got to a certain point, literally after every session, doing like rounds, recording myself, doing my posing routine. Because at the end of the practice makes practice makes perfect. You know what I mean? So the more you do something, the better you're gonna get.
Yeah, cool. That's so true, and it's hard work as well. Like pose, I think a lot of people don't realize how hard posing is.
Yeah, it
It's
is. Yeah. 'Cause you can pose, but can you hold the pose?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, just
Yeah.
holding a front relax. I was doing like every day, like almost every day for like 7 months, and up to the point like a front relax for a minute and a half, then all the
Yeah.
quarter turns, and then practicing the routine as well. And it's a lot. I'll do it first thing in the morning just to get it done, get it out of the way. And then
I think
sometimes,
what you said about the front relax, that's the one because
yeah, that
your
is one.
shoulders are just, especially when you're on stage, like
Mm,
that's the one I was feeling the most. Like my
yeah,
shoulders were just on fire.
they burn.
Like,
Yeah. And that
yeah,
is it's funny actually with posing. I think there are certain poses that are just much easier to hit than others. I think
yeah, definitely.
front relaxed is not one of them. It's just
Yeah, it's just,
annoyingly, it's the one you spend the most time in, and it is
yeah,
probably the
and it's
most uncomfortable.
but it's one of the most important ones.
Yeah, it certainly
Yeah.
is. It really. So next, I had Dr. Andrew Chappelle on the podcast, and Andy was my posing coach last year. So we actually did all of our posing sessions like this via Zoom. So it was actually strange to do a session with me with my clothes on because usually me and Andy would be conversing and I'd be like in my posing trunks, flexing, him giving me directions. So yeah, it was weird to be with clothes chatting to Andy, but yeah, like I mentioned before, I find the whole psychological aspect and all the psychological traits of bodybuilders very interesting. And I love this point Andy makes about like internal versus external locus of control. So yeah, really, really interesting chat, this one.
If you're someone who's internally locus of control, that means that you're the sort of person who makes things happen for you. So you're the person that's able to drive change within yourself. The reason why you've got a big house and a nice car and you get the A's on the exam paper or you're in shape, etc., is the work that you're doing off your own back. Yeah. So that's a trait that people can have, and you can measure that, how internally driven, etc., people actually are. And the other side of it is you can be externally locus of control. So that is people who are more, well, there's not a lot I can do about this. I'm the way I am because of my circumstances, and I can't help it that I'm overweight or I can't achieve this test score or I only earn a certain amount because of my background, etc. Because of this. Now, both things can be true.
Yeah.
So you can't necessarily rule out all these sort of things. And there is this idea of gains. I'm trying not to get too complicated, but domains of competence. Yeah. So you can be great in one area whereby your own internal drivers are the thing which will allow you to be successful, and not so good in other areas.
Next, I had Theo Golab on the podcast, and yeah, Theo had an incredible year in 2024. winning with the BMBF and the WMBF, getting 2 pro cards there. And yeah, he makes a great point about when he's not competing, bodybuilding isn't his main focus. And yeah, like I mentioned in my chat with Theo, I've been there before. When you're putting too much pressure on yourself, it's yeah, firstly it makes the whole process less enjoyable. But also, yeah, like I've said before, I think the best bodybuilders are people that they're more than just bodybuilders. You have to have something else.
Yeah, I just try not to let it really like overtake my life. It's just literally that period of time, like when I'm in the gym, do what I need to do outside the gym, obviously give me food, give me meals and what's not, but just relax. There's more to life than bodybuilding. Sorry guys, I know you all love bodybuilding and it's life and all that, but like honestly, I enjoy a lot of things. I enjoy doing a lot of different things. So
yeah, that's really good. You made some great points there. And yeah, it's funny. A couple of things, like the first one, like that person you created, that the kind of bodybuilding is life person, that was kind of me back in the day. And I think it became too much, and that's why I kind of had to step away. I couldn't, like I said to Andy in the last podcast, it was too much of my identity, and I was like, I don't like this. I'm putting too much pressure on myself. So yeah, you've got a really healthy relationship, the ability just to kind of switch off. Yeah, you need to kind of bottle that and sell it, because that is I think a lot of bodybuilders could do with that, to be fair. Next, I had Alberto Nunez on the podcast, and Alberto is someone I've been following since 2013. So yeah, a little bit of history. So before I competed in 2013, I followed Martin Birkin, who was this advocate of intermittent fasting. Basically, I think he was probably the guy that popularized intermittent fasting, certainly amongst like bodybuilders, powerlifters, etc. And yeah, I had pretty good results with it, trying that kind of approach. And yeah, I remember Martin had this crazy most muscular shot where he's just looks super lean, super jacked. Then I discovered the same shot that Alberto Nunez doing it, and I just thought, what the hell is that? It looks ridiculous. So vascular, so grainy. And then yeah, I discovered 3DMJ, Matt August, Lane Norton, and all of that lot. Led me to flexible dieting, which I think on the most part is, yeah, for me at least, it makes the most sense when it comes to bodybuilding, like the dietary approach to take. And yeah, Alberto Nunez, yeah, it was really, really cool to get him on the podcast. And yeah, the point he makes here about recomping is a really valid one, and it's certainly one that I've implemented myself.
I guess the next question would be like, well, do you ever see this in practice, right? Because it's one thing to connect the dots and talk about things at a mechanistic level, but is it really happening? Go look at the elite world-class powerlifters. I really wish like we can learn a lot. Like speaking of bodybuilders that won't learn from like enhanced guys, or enhanced guys that won't learn from us. If you look at those folks, like to this day, like the most muscular pecs, hamstrings, and glutes that I've seen, it's not on drug-free natural bodybuilders. It's like in the back of like our big national level powerlifting meets here. But these guys usually just hover at a body weight for as many years as they can because they don't want to go up to the next class. And you just see them over the years. You're just like, man, you're just filling that out more and more. You're running out of time. You're like about to compete at single digits if you're not careful at powerlifting. So there's a whole large pool to extract from. And again, these are people who aren't necessarily using S-tier movements for building muscle. But they are progressing because that's the name of their game. They're eating a high protein diet, and you just see it there. So I think for most bodybuilders, if you're serious, once you've gotten to that point where this lifestyle is second nature, is like find that comfy fighting weight and then just try to make it look better over time.
So next I had Dirk Emmerich on the podcast. Really honored to have him on. Obviously he's a pro world champion. Once again, he trains with incredible form. And in this episode, we talk about his technique a little bit, and we talk about him, maximizing mechanical tension on the muscle. And yeah, it's a really, really cool piece of information Dirk shares here.
The main thing why I train the way I do is like to not get injured. That is a big one, while like making progress. So I like to see it as like making the movements as standardized and challenging as possible. And therefore, I still get great amounts of like mechanical tension in while minimizing the stress on my joints. So yeah, I still try to get as strong as possible. So now on the RDL, I'm almost at 200 kgs again, which is huge for me. But even there, I have it still a slow, controlled, eccentric, all of it. So I don't try to minimize the load in a sense, what some people might think of like, oh, I just want to train light. I want to just standardize it and still train as heavy as possible with that standard of execution, basically.
Next, I had Oscar Moscat on the podcast. Yeah, this was a really, really cool chat. Yeah, Oscar Moscat finished second, I believe it was, at the WNBF Worlds last year. And yeah, I think, in my opinion, if he nails his conditioning, he's going to be unstoppable. I don't think there's anyone who has as complete a physique as Oscar Moscat. Yeah, I think he's destined to be the world's best natural, in my opinion. Unbelievable physique, but also like a really interesting guy. I could have chatted to him for hours about various topics, not even related to bodybuilding. So yeah, this is a really, really cool chat. And he touches on, I think, one of the best pieces of advice for an advanced lifter, and that's experimentation. So I think obviously getting information from YouTube, from Instagram. I don't use TikTok, but that's another one as well. It can be useful, but I think once you've reached a certain point in your training career, there's no substitute for experimentation, for trying things yourself, find out what works and what doesn't work. Because that's actually going to teach you as well. It's all well and good following someone's advice, but you need to actually go out there and try things yourself. And yeah, Oscar is someone who I think intuitively is, he likes to experiment. And yeah, check this out. This is such a good point.
Actually, it's funny because even yesterday I was watching a video of someone explaining tricep engagement. So like engaging the different parts of your tricep and, underhand, overhand, blah, blah, blah. And you just see the comments going crazy, like underhand and overhand, there's no difference. And the scientific study says boo, boo, boo. And in my head, I'm thinking like, damn, I've done underhand tricep extensions. I've done overhand. And I could feel the difference.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
Yeah.
And it's like, what am I doing? I don't care because I know what works for me. You know what I mean? And I get it. Like for the majority of the population, certain things don't work. But then there's a certain few that it does work. And maybe for that particular movement, I'm part of that certain few. And for other movements, I fall into the majority of the population.
Yeah.
Experience is the best teacher. So for me, that's always been the case. Let's try the movements that work, take those, put them in the bag.
Next, I had James Melville on the podcast. So yeah, he's another one who's been in this game for a while. And I was aware of him back when I competed in 2015, but our paths never really crossed. And yeah, he makes a really, really good point here about when you reach peak condition, you should be slowing down that rate of loss. And I love the analogy he uses of a cliff edge to describe like pushing too hard for condition, because I've definitely experienced this before. Like I mentioned before, my second show at the BNBF finals, I pushed way, way too hard. And the analogy of it being a cliff edge is, I'd say, the perfect way of describing it, because your physique can deteriorate very, very quickly. Once you're already there, you're in that kind of window where you're your very best. Yeah, you don't want to be making drastic changes because it will go downhill very quickly.
There's two sides to it. I think that as you're competing and the older you get, you do get better at dieting. So you're just nudging the bar of where you need to be a little bit more.
Yeah.
And what's interesting what you said about your first prep and going then into the British afterwards, where you felt that you think that you actually went backwards a little bit, like over dieted. I've done exactly the same a few times, and I call it your cliff edge.
Yeah.
Like I always say to people, your rate of pushing the closer you get to the cliff edge should be consciously reduced. You should be slowing down as you get to that edge and assessing it. And it's okay to get to the point where you have one foot dangling off the edge and then pull it back. That's your look. You can't just take another full step out, because once you fall off, that physique is really hard to recover.
Next, I had Utti Hiatilla, Finnish bodybuilder, on the podcast, who I competed with in 2024. So yeah, I met Utti backstage at the Supernaturals last year. Yeah, really, really nice guy. Yeah, that was a fun show. That was my first with the WNBF. I met Utti. I met Innocent Kalu, who won our class and then went on to become a pro world champion. Stuart Edwards, I met as well. Really nice guy backstage. And yeah, altogether, just a really, really fun day. So yeah, this point that Utti makes here, he makes a really, really good point on focusing on technique as opposed to keep chasing keeping on chasing the logbook. And it's once again a really useful point, and it speaks to that kind of experimentation mindset that I think all the best bodybuilders have.
And then for those lagging muscle groups, then like that was the final thing, was when I finally just had enough courage to discard the heavier is better mentality and start to I actually kind of threw the logbook out on my arm day, and I was like, okay, I'm not even going to look at the weight. I'm just going to pick up a pair of dumbbells and squeeze my biceps against that resistance and go until I can't go anymore. And it was crazy. It was like within 2 weeks I had stretch marks in my biceps. And then I did the same thing for quads and side delts and all the other muscle groups that had really not benefited from the heavier stuff before. So that was like the final real I wouldn't call it a growth spurt, but like a really good period of progress. And once I did that for like 2 years, focusing more on concentrated targeted hypertrophy training for those lagging muscle groups, then actually that was when I was finally kind of ready to compete.
Next, I had junior world champion Charlie Cuthbert on the podcast. So yeah, Charlie was a great guest. Like a few of the other guys I mentioned, they're a little bit younger. He's definitely someone that's wise beyond his years, and yeah, he's clearly got a great future ahead of him. Charlie does. So yeah, I met Charlie at the DFAC Worlds last year in Munich, and yeah, he had an incredible season. And the point he makes here about delayed gratification, it really epitomizes what bodybuilding is all about.
The importance of being able to like cope with delayed gratification.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, because training's it's very monotonous. It's the same thing day in day out. Not a lot's changing, but just the value of being able to kind of repeat the boring things time and time again, being extremely consistent with it over time. Because I think being able to deal with that delayed gratification, putting the work in without seeing much return on your investment sometimes when you're in a gaining phase, looking worse, not really seeing where the muscle's going on, just seeing where the body fat's going on. But just sticking with it, being able to do so even when you have things, injuries arise, like setbacks come up, and still being able to kind of remain resilient and just keep cracking on pretty much. Because I think being able to handle that delayed gratification, you can extrapolate that, and that can apply to any other aspect of life, like business for myself, and also any sort of education. I think that's kind of massively valuable, and that's why I love bodybuilding so much, and I love the gym and I love the process, because the traits that make you a successful bodybuilder will apply elsewhere in life.
So next I spoke to Zach Moore. So Zach has yet to compete in bodybuilding, but yeah, he's clearly got a bright future ahead of him and insane potential. Yeah, definitely go and check out his Instagram. He's a type 1 diabetic, and the message he shares here about helping kids, with type 1 diabetes, yeah, it's a beautiful message.
I went into this not expecting what I ended up getting from being a counselor. It ended up being like the most important thing I'd ever done, being able to be, I never wanted to be a role model. I never wanted to put myself in a spotlight. Like my bodybuilding journey before this, nobody knew who I was. I didn't care about posting about it. But seeing that I can get people to want to better themselves has pushed me to step on stage, and hopefully it ends up helping some people.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I've been trying to draw a lot of attention to Memories Made. They're a charity that helps to send, because camp is expensive to put on, and so it costs money. But they're a charity that helps to send type 1 children to these camps. They're kids like 6 to 17-year-olds is the age range, and it's an age where they're incredibly impressionable.
I had Dr. Zena on the podcast next. So I met Dr. Zena Al-Kalabi last year at BMBF Southern. Yeah, she judged at the BMBF Southern last year. And yeah, this was a really, really fun chat we had. And it was quite cool to delve into things from a judge's perspective. And yeah, what she says here about actually presenting yourself to the fullest and wanting it, that can be the deciding factor. This is a really important point.
Judging last year, there was so many categories where I would perhaps have two athletes very, very, very similar. Like I could think, oh, it could go either way. And, that could perhaps be one person would have, a better shape. The other one would have like slightly more muscle. And then they come out in the evening show and one person has wanted it and one person hasn't. And that was the decision, Like, for example, with figure, they come and do their T-walk. If you can tell the difference of somebody that really wants it and somebody that doesn't. And at the end of the day, there's your decision made. And I'm not just saying that, like that has happened between all of us. And they come out, you watch routines, I watch, you're like, yeah, like that's the winner.
So next I had Jeffrey Verity Schoenfeld, or GVS, on the podcast. And yeah, really, really fun chat, this one. So yeah, GVS he's someone I've been aware of for a long time due to his YouTube channel, which is both informative and very funny. You should definitely check it out. And yeah, this one really lived up to my expectations. Really, really fun chat. And yeah, Jeff is clearly someone that thinks deeply about training. And yeah, although he's yet to compete, he has some incredible insights. Yeah, check this one out.
And so, yeah, I also think it's worth noting that if you take a certain physique, if someone built it naturally versus if someone built it taking a ton of juice, the one who built it naturally, 99 times out of 100, is going to know more about training. They're going to know more about training. They went over plateaus. They had to try a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah. It took them 3 times as long or more, 4 or 5 times as long. They had to be way more committed to the process.
Yeah.
And so they're going to be a much better source of information overall if you're just looking at the physique. And so you're essentially playing a different game.
Yeah.
So why would you not say that if you have things way harder because you've stayed natural?
Next, I had Monique Coleman on the podcast. So Monique is a figure world champion. And yeah, this is another really interesting chat. So yeah, Monique is actually not on social media and made a very interesting point here. So there's definitely a lesson to be learned here. I know most of us are on social media in some way, shape or form. But what she says about that reacting to people's comments, both positive and negative, yeah, it really resonated with me. What's interesting, so you don't do any of the kind of social media stuff, and it kind of reminds me of like Dorian Yates back in the day, like training solitude, no drama, and then he would just rock up and just clean up at the shows. You mentioned in our little chat that like social media can be like a false feedback loop and it can limit progress. Can you elaborate on that? Tell us some of your thoughts.
Yeah. What I mean is, so for example, my coach has never ever said to me, "Wow, you look amazing," ever. What he will say is something very specific. So he'll say, "Oh, your glutes are coming in. You're looking tight." It'll be a very objective feedback.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes on social media, because I was on there for a short period of time, you just get fire emojis under your picture from someone that doesn't even know anything about bodybuilding. And you might get 30 or 40 of those from people that don't know anything about bodybuilding. They don't know, they've never judged the show. Their feedback is irrelevant in my opinion. It's support, not really feedback that you can do anything with. And I think a lot of people can put themselves under pressure once you put all of that kind of attention.
So next I had Dr. Eric Helms on the podcast, another really interesting chat where we talked about genetics and how that pertains to natural bodybuilding, like success. And yeah, Eric is someone like the rest of 3DMJ I've been aware of since 2014. And yeah, he and 3DMJ were kind of pivotal in getting me started with natural bodybuilding. So yeah, it was a real honor to have him on the podcast. I love what he said about Brian Whittaker here. So for those who don't know, Brian Whittaker was a pro world champion back about a decade ago, I believe it was. And he has great, but not like world-class elite genetics. And Eric talks here about maximizing your genetic potential.
You know what? I'll give you an honest example for the OGs who are followed the sport for a while. I would say Brian Whittaker is a good example of someone with good bodybuilding genetics, but not great, but still good enough to be a world champion.
Yeah.
Which there's just a certain threshold you got to clear. Like his symmetry is perfect. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing that's out of balance, but there's nothing that stands out.
Yeah.
He doesn't have an incredibly wide, like shoulder structure. I wouldn't say he's narrow, but there are definitely wider bodybuilders. He doesn't have any crazy attachments or muscle bellies or anything like that, but there's no flaws. And then you layer on top of that his willpower, his mindset, his dedication, and the fact that he can get incredibly lean and that he's big enough and that he knows how to just like pop, and he's an excellent poser, and he seeks that feedback. And when he peaks well, all that comes together, and he can beat a Siobhan Cunningham, right?
Next, I had D Nolan on the podcast, and yeah, D makes a very interesting point here about social media and how divisive it can be. And I've certainly fallen for this trap before. I think I've mentioned on the podcast, like back in the IIFYM days, if it fits your macros, I was very much in that camp and would foolishly look down at people who were in the clean eating camp. And I think, social media, it definitely encourages us to be divisive. And the point D makes here is such a useful one.
I think social media does this where it kind of encourages people to be really divisive and confrontational, and very much like polarizing, where you have to be in a tribe or like pick a side. So the guys turn it into like naturals versus enhanced. And I also wanted to address that point as well, because for the majority of people, whether you're natural or enhanced, like we've got so much more in common than not. And then, as I kind of said in the post, and I'm trying to think of a better analogy, but when if you say you're a natural bodybuilder, so in my bio it says natural bodybuilder, it's kind of me just signaling in a way that you would do with a sports team, like I play for or I support this sports team.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like just a signal. Then if somebody comes across your page, they're going to go, oh, okay, I'm also a natural bodybuilder. I'm going to relate to this guy. And you can create connections. And in the same way that you and I have, or like so many countless people on social media, because we've kind of got that shared interest.
Next, I had Anthony Stickings on the podcast, 2 times Mr. Scotland. Anthony was deep in prep when we had this chat, so I'm very grateful he took the time out to come and chat with me. He's got an incredible physique and he trains with impeccable form as well, so definitely go and check him out on Instagram. This is not really a tip, but it's a very, very cool story. So he can actually pinpoint the exact time and place where he fell in love with lifting weights. And what I learned from this basically was, it kind of reminds me of something Ryan Doris said back in the day, and that is like, you can't fake passion. And Anthony's clearly someone that is passionate about lifting, and that really shines through here. Can you give the listeners and viewers an insight into kind of where it all began for you and what kind of sparked your love for the gym?
Yeah, I can pin it down to an exact day.
Right.
It was the annual clear out of the family garage.
Right.
And we're sorting things, throwing things away. Mum and Dad are out saying, "Oh, get rid of that, get rid of that." And underneath my dad's toolboxes and stuff like that, there's 2 dumbbells with just a little bit of weight on it. I'm like, what's this? Pick them up, and just instinctively, I did a lateral raise.
Right.
I was like, "Oh, I like that." And my dad kind of caught me doing that, and he's like, "Okay." I'm like, "Yeah, but those are my weights that I used to use," and so on and so forth. My dad used to be very much into bodybuilding in the early 80s. Never in a competitive way, more than a keep fit and live your life kind of way.
And finally, we have IFBB Wellness Pro Maddie Daniel. So Maddie trains at my gym, and we've known each other for around a year or so now. She's a great athlete, and like a lot of the guests I've had on, she really, she clearly thinks deeply about things too. And interestingly, the clip I'm going to share with you guys is from one of my non-bodybuilding related questions. So I always ask quick fire questions at the end of each episode. And this one really, really hits home. I know a lot of people are going to relate to what Maddie is saying here, especially for someone that suffers from like imposter syndrome or self-doubt. So I'm going to leave you guys with this clip. The question was, what piece of advice would you give to your younger self? And this was Maddie's response. See you guys next time.
Keep yourself to a standard. I'm glad I do that. And I'm glad I keep myself to what I would be happy with. Not just, but don't simmer on that for so long that you do nothing. Like, not a case of do nothing, but like you don't ever showcase what you're doing. You don't ever put anything out there. Because similarly with bodybuilding, with the clothing that I did, with music, anything that I've done where I've had to then, it comes to a point where you have to showcase it, or it comes to a point where you have to put it out there, or you have to perform or whatever. I put it off because I'm like, no, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready. I'm not good enough. Like, I'm not at a standard, but you have to start. You have to like allow yourself to be in a position where you're not at your best, but you can improve from then on. I think that has been like, that's always something that I still struggle with now.